In this video, I am going to show you exactly how to define and create the perfect Meta, Facebook, and Instagram advertising budget. So when you go and use Meta to set up advertising campaigns to drive qualified traffic to your website, you are confident that the amount you are spending is going to help you achieve the goals you have in place. So yes, welcome to this video. I'm going to be walking you through a free calculator tool which you're going to be able to go and get access from in the description below this video. Go and click that link. You'll be able to go into the document. Just a quick heads up, please go to File, make a copy so you can get access to this. Do not request access to edit it, you will not be granted. But if you go and make a copy, you'll have your own, which you can then modify to your heart's content. What I'm going to be doing in this video though is walking you through how to use this calculator to again get the perfect budget that is going to help you achieve your business objective, your goals. So if that's driving sales, fantastic. I'm going to show you how much you need to spend to drive the certain amount of sales you're looking to achieve. If you're aiming for leads, the same concept applies. I'm going to show you exactly how much you need to spend to achieve the number of leads you are looking for. And this is going to be a very mathematical approach because a lot of paid advertising is ultimately based on math and formulas. And this is going to be a perfectly broken down, most simplistic way of looking at it. This is also what I have used, just as a heads up, from being a marketing director at one of the top advertising agencies here in Canada. For multiple clients who are spending millions of dollars per year, we typically start with this approach in place to figure out where our budget should be allocated. And we do this across many different paid advertising mediums and different paid channels or self-serve paid advertising channels such as Meta, LinkedIn, Pinterest, and so forth. So with that being said, I've just got a little hypothetical here for us. So as we walk through this, we can all align and pretend that we are looking at business X. So business X has come to us today, maybe your business X, but they have asked us how much do we need to spend on Meta advertising to drive 50 sales every month. So that is our objective here. We need to drive 50 sales every month. Let's just also assume here that business X is gonna require leads to drive sales. So they generate leads and then they convert those leads into sales. They also want to know, will we be profitable or will we be losing money on generating these sales? Most businesses obviously don't want to be wasting revenue, or I shouldn't say revenue, I should say marketing budget with a loss of revenue, so that they are not having a gross net profit. So with that being said, we'll figure out, are we going to be losing money or are we going to be gaining money? Is this actually going to be a profitable venture for this business X? And then because business X is a little bit savvy and they have some experience in marketing, they're going to say what metrics are in our control to improve the cost effectiveness of our efforts. So what can we actually control without essentially spending more or less money, but actually improving the overall results of our advertising campaigns. So hopefully this sounds exciting. This is something I do every week, and I just want to share it with you to help you if you are a small business owner, an entrepreneur, you're whoever, just trying to get into Meta advertising, but you're really uncertain about what you should actually be spending to achieve the results you want. And hopefully this is going to open your eyes up into how to view paid advertising and optimize it in an effective way. So hypothetically, we need to generate 50 sales for business X. The way we use this calculator is essentially we work from the end in mind. So starting over here with sales, we're going to type in our goal. We're going to type in our conversion rate, our leads conversion rate, our click-through rate, and then our cost per thousand or cost per meal to figure out ultimately how much we should spend. Just as a heads up, hopefully everyone can see this in blue, but this blue is going to be anything you need to manually enter. Everything in black will be automatically calculated for you. So let's get into this. Let's type in our 50 sales. The reason I've actually used 50 in this hypothetical as well here is that because it's really important to note that when you are running advertising campaigns on Meta, you need 50 conversions every 7 days. So with that in mind, it's going to help you exit the learning phase in your campaigns, which is then going to improve the deliverability of your campaign itself. And by that, what I mean is who you're actually targeting or putting your ads in front of, what time of day your ads are being shown, what placement across Facebook and Instagram your ads are in, and then the actual ads themselves. So that's all going to come together to help you drive more of your objective that you've set your campaign up for in a more cost-effective way. So you're actually technically spending less money to achieve the result you have set up the campaign for. Now, there's many different results or objectives you can set up meta campaigns for. You can obviously set them up for sales or purchases is the actual naming convention on Meta. You can do app downloads, you can do leads, you can do simply landing page views, you can go into more engagement metrics like video views, page likes, etc. Typically, I recommend that businesses lean more towards not essentially a tangible objective, but an objective that is going to actually truly help their business grow. And that's typically going to be in the form of leads, sales, or purchases, and then app downloads if you are in that industry. So with that being in mind, 50 is why we've set this, because we need to at least achieve 50 sales every day. But if we go back to our hypothetical here, we need to drive 50 sales every month. So with that being considered, we essentially need to actually triple this. We need to be driving almost 200 sales every month, because we need 50 every 7 days. So you want to start thinking of things a little bit like this. That's why I've set this up this way, because whether you're a freelance media buyer or marketer, or you're an entrepreneur or a business owner, or you're working for a small business and you're setting this up, you need to start thinking this way. And maybe sales in the beginning, and we'll get to this a little bit later in the video, maybe sales are not the best objective for you to be going towards, despite maybe say you're an e-commerce store and sales is obviously the clear objective you are looking for, the goal you are wanting to achieve, because you will at the end of the day need to be driving a lot more. Let's just leave this as 50 for now, keeping in mind that it would realistically have to be 200, because we'd have to obviously times it out every 7 days, roughly 4 weeks in a month. So 200 sales to make sure we're achieving 50 every 7 days. So keep that in mind just for the time being, but we'll leave it at 50 for now. Next up, conversion rate. You're going to need to know this. You can use Google Analytics as a tool to figure out your conversion rate, or you might be using another tool which has it natively built in to provide these types of metrics. But this essentially is how many users are actually converting into sales. So again, in this hypothetical, we're going to be driving leads in a second, but how many of these leads actually convert into sales? You're going to need this information. You can ultimately go and Google industry averages. I'm not going to provide them here, because every industry greatly varies and there's so many variables that come into play when it comes to your actual conversion rate for your business. But let's just say our conversion rate is like 2.5%. So for every 100 leads we gain, 2.5% of them convert into sales. Doing our math backwards, it's going to say, well, if that is the case, you're going to need 2,000 leads to convert 2.5% of these into your 50 sales. As you can see, these numbers are going to start getting quite large quite quick. Next up, we need traffic. We need to send people to a landing page where we may be converting those leads. Maybe those leads are getting sent through a funnel. And in that funnel, or let's say it's a video sales letter if you're thinking of digital products, or maybe it's an actual call with a sales representative and they hop on and give a product demo or just have a conversation. Either way, the close rate is 2.5. Let's just say from that traffic that we send to a landing page, we're converting at a really healthy 25%, or in this industry, maybe it is healthy, maybe in another industry it's not. Despite that, we're converting at a 25% conversion rate. To generate 2,000 leads at a 25% conversion rate, we need to send 8,000 people to our landing page. This is where we now get more into the metrics for our paid advertising here. So this is where we start controlling a bit more on the meta side of things. So the first thing is our click-through rate. This is how many users click on your ad. So let's say 1,000 people view your ad. What is the percentage of those users that actually click on it and go to your website? Typically, when you're starting off, you're going to be in a 1 to 3% range. If you start optimizing your creative to be really high performing, you can get up to 5% plus. 5 to 10% is very high in most cases, but we do have clients, at least that I work with, that are in that 5 to 10% range. But you're realistically going to be in 2 to 3%, maybe 1%, etc. Just be realistic. I would say under promise and hopefully get over delivered when it comes to it. If you haven't run ads before, that's totally fine. I do also have some benchmarks down here in this tab below, which will give you some industry averages for click-through rate as well as just the general average across everything. Please do take this with a pinch of salt or grain of salt, because while apparel, jewelry, and footwear may say there's a click rate of 1.6, it could greatly vary for you. For example, footwear is a massive category. There's the male category, the female category, there's the hiking category, the running category, the just general comfort, the by the pool side, the swim footwear, the list goes on. So take that with a grain of salt. I would say go lower and then be hopefully delighted when you achieve higher than that in the future. Either way, your click-through rate is in place. We now have your impressions. So with your impressions, this is basically users who actually see your ad. That's what an impression is. One impression equals one person has seen your ad. You need 266,000 people to get 3% of them to click through to generate 8,000 users who convert at 25% into your leads, who then convert into your sales. We're almost at the end here. We now just need to put in our CPM. Again, in that benchmarks tabs, you're going to have some CPMs. I'm just going to throw in $10 as a flat here just to use as this hypothetical. Let's just say for this industry, we've generating a CPM of $10. It might be lower. This varies country to country. It also depends on seasonality. For example, during the holiday period in December and November with Black Friday, etc., these skyrocket up because there's a lot more competition within the market. So there's a lot more competition for gathering those impressions or gaining impressions for people's ads. It also just depends on your own seasonality, your own ad performance. For example, if you have a higher click-through rate, that signals to Meta that your ads are of high quality, people enjoy them, people want to engage with them, people like them. So it's going to reward you by lowering the actual cost to generate impressions for you too, and so forth. But we'll discuss that in a little bit. But yeah, a CPM is basically how much it costs per 1,000 impressions for you to have. So think of this as cost per 1,000 impressions. So it costs you $10 to generate 1,000 of those impressions. You can see roughly here, if it's $10, the impressions 266K. This is what we need to spend. Now, considering all things, unfortunately, paid media or paid advertising is not just a linear trend or just a linear graph in terms of do this and spend this. Consider some contingencies, some things that may happen, some margin for error. I would typically want to add at least maybe 10%, especially working with smaller numbers on top of this. So an extra $260. So I would just realistically round this up to $3,000 is what we'd have to actually spend to achieve 50 sales in this hypothetical scenario. Now, keep in mind, this is for 7 days. Every 7 days, you would want to be spending this amount of money to generate your 50 sales. So this will start opening up your eyes in just terms of what the true cost of advertising is. Because time and time again, I will see people say, oh, I just want to spend $50 a day, or just spend $25 a day, or can I start with $5 a day? And the answer realistically is yes, you can do that, but you would most likely want to look at your objective to be just, for example, traffic in this case. And I'm going to talk about how you can modify these in a second if you were going to change your objective. If you're looking at this number and saying there's no way we could ever spend that on a monthly basis or maybe even a yearly basis and so forth. Because again, realistically for this client Business X, we would need to be doing 200 sales every month to achieve the period of 50 optimizations within every 7 days. Because again, every 7 days, 1 week, 4 weeks, roughly in a month, we need to do 200 sales to make this actually a worthwhile or optimized campaign that we should be pushing marketing budget towards. That's going to be a $10,000 spend. Again, I would round this up a little bit just for room for comfort. Need to roughly spend 11,000 every month with these metrics in place to achieve this amount of sales. Now, you may be saying, like I said, and we'll get to these bits in a second, but you may be saying, well, we can't spend that. That is way out of our budget. That's not achievable. that is completely fine. That is a-okay. What you can do in this case is maybe say, okay, well, let's optimize towards leads. Leads might be a little bit more achievable for us because we have a conversion rate of 25%. So what we can do here is we could just essentially pretend that sales are leads and maybe say, okay, well, let's just try and aim for roughly 100 leads per month. Well, our conversion rate for leads, as we know, is 25%. We don't have a conversion rate between these steps, so we can just put in a flat 100. And there you go. You can see our spend has greatly decreased just to acquire those leads, because again, we're just basically pushing traffic through here. This is still essentially traffic. This is now changed to our leads. Leads conversion rate, traffic conversion rate just is 100%. So we push that through, and therefore we can generate our leads. So once you get this up a bit, you may say, well, actually, we really actually need 1,000 leads, and you can start playing around with those numbers to see how much it would truly cost for you. But let's just undo that. Let's keep things back to how they were, where we need to generate 200 sales with our leads and conversion rates in place. The next piece of the puzzle here is now, well, okay, how much do we need to spend on a daily basis? What Meta recommends, and I've spoken to their account growth managers and different representatives at Meta because we have partnerships with them, and they recommend, and this is also on their website, so it's not hidden information by any means, but they recommend for you to spend 5 times the cost per result you are looking for. So what is the goal when it comes to a sale? What is the cost per acquisition goal you have for each sale that comes in place? Now, this is typically going to be a formula of your cost of goods, your margin, your average order value. There's many pieces that come to it. I don't want to dive into it now, but you should roughly know what your margin at least is on your sales so that you can figure out, well, how much can we spend to at least break even on acquiring that sale, and then we can basically spend even the break-even amount, and then ideally start spending less of that break-even amount so that you start profiting from your paid media advertising efforts. But despite that, right now what we're seeing is we're seeing a cost per acquisition to generate these 200 sales with the amount spent, or the amount recommended to spend here, at $53. We're going to spend $53 to acquire each sale of this. So for all 200, we've had to spend $53.33 each. Now, you may be saying, that's great. That is actually below our break-even point. You may be saying, actually, that's way above. We're going to definitely lose money in this case. Whatever it is, you should be able to place your cost per acquisition target here. And let's just say, hypothetically, your cost per acquisition is actually $45. So what you're going to have to do here is look at spending essentially $225 a day. Now, this is a really easy way of obviously figuring out what it is going to cost. You could have almost skipped this top piece, but this top piece is very important because it gives you a reality check. You could essentially have just say, well, what's my cost per acquisition cost? I need to spend, 5 times X that amount. Happy days, dust your hands off and move on. But the reality is even despite obviously spending this per day, you may not actually be achieving your sales target, and obviously other pieces we've discussed, such as 50 optimizations every 7 days and so forth. Now, with that being said, you can take this approach. You can work on the 5x CPA. It depends on what your goal is. However, I would typically recommend that you stick more towards this top line where it's actually spitting out exactly what you need to spend to achieve this. And then, of course, you can figure out a breakdown of what this would be by the days in the month. You could just divide this by 30, 31, or you could just divide it by the average of 30.4, because that's what you can look at for a whole year base. But with that in mind, one thing I want to discuss just before we hit these bottom tables here to go over what your daily spend should be as well as your profit calculations, it's basically looking at the idea of what is in your control when it comes to this, because at the end of the day, I think one thing a lot of people get backwards, and there's an argument for this where it's right and also wrong, but a lot of people think they're in control of their spend, that they can just put in more money and drive more results. But as I've already discussed, growth is not a linear trend. It's not a linear line on a graph that just the more you put in, the more you get, or if you double the money, you get double the results. No, there's a lot of volatility when it comes to paid advertising with what is happening, competition in the market, just general consensus for the week on how people are engaged with your brand, who you reach that week, how they're feeling that week, how your creative performs that week, what placements it's put in, etc. The list goes on. So what you are in control of here realistically is your click-through rate and your conversion rates, and of course your goal that you have in mind. But this is where you can really put in a lot of effort in terms of ultimately not having to spend more, but gaining the same amount or even gaining more if you have the same amount of spend. So let's just say hypothetically you say, let's not put more money in, but let's look at what we can work on within our marketing efforts. Let's try and tighten up our leads to sales process. And let's say you put in some conversion rate optimizations across your website and you bring that up to 3%. Keep in mind, this is 10,666. So we bring this up to 3%. We can see we've just dropped a significant amount. We've dropped over obviously 1,500 plus there in that case. And that's just by focusing efforts in that. So you could look at, well, do we want to either reduce our spend, do we want to keep it our same, or can we invest in a conversion rate optimization specialist to help us improve our leads to sales conversion rate, and therefore we're saving money. And of course that impacts also organic traffic as well as any other paid marketing mediums that you're on, such as let's say you're running Google ads, LinkedIn ads, depends obviously the industry of your business, but any other channels out there, self-serve platforms, that's going to help you greatly. Also, let's pretend that you then say, okay, well, let's improve our traffic to leads conversion rate and figure out what's going on here. I would always recommend working from the end in mind. But let's just say we work on this and we get it up to 30%. So keep in mind, 8,800. We're now down to 7,400 because we focused our efforts on variables we have more control over rather than the volatility that comes with self-serve paid advertising platforms. The final thing you really can control here is your click-through rate. Let's just say you put in more marketing budget, more time, more energy, more effort, maybe bring in an in-house expert to help with your creative production and marketing. Maybe you hire a copywriter to help build scripts for videos you have in market, etc. Let's just say you bring this up even up to 3.5%. That's going to also significantly impact your lower end. It's also going to make you require less leads because you've driven more traffic to the page and so forth, which is going to help on the operational side of management, because if you're paying for obviously an email marketing list or a CRM where leads are being pulled through, typically with those tools you will have to pay for depends on obviously the pricing model, but sometimes you have to pay per customer or per contact within a CRM, or you have to pay per sort of band of amount of leads or email list subscribers, etc. you have. So also keep your costs down there and make it easier for you to manage your CRM and list. So that alone is worth value on the end of improving these metrics. And then also, like I said earlier, because you've actually improved your click-through rate and your conversion rates and everyone's actually enjoying going through your business journey, your business user journey, Meta will recognize that because you'll have your pixel installed across your site as well as also naturally being pointed to your conversions. And if more people are interacting and engaging with you down the line, Meta's going to give you some nice discounts and it may lower your CPM. So you can see just by us working on variables we can control or marketing materials we can control, we've essentially almost half the cost of our advertising to still achieve the exact same result. Right here, we've also, as you can see, almost halved our cost per acquisition, which is amazing. And that's also then helped obviously with our budget in terms of what they recommend. So if you wanted to generate, let's say then a few sales a day, you would need to look at this budget and say, well, for every cost per acquisition, it's going to be this amount. This is what they're recommending we spend on a daily basis to acquire one. How many do we need on a daily basis? And you can do essentially the math from there. The next piece is then down here. If you are splitting out your campaigns based on different objectives, you would also want to look at what your daily budget therefore is in this case. Let's say you wanted to run a campaign that's purely focused on lead generation. You may want to allocate 50% of your budget to that. Essentially, what this formula is doing is it's taking this cost per acquisition it's taking whatever the allocation of this budget is, and then it is just dividing it by 30.4, which is the average of your days. Realistically, if you wanted to look again at this on a just daily basis, that you wanted to spend this every day, you can get rid of that 30.4. The same also applies here, and therefore it's obviously these added up, it's going to be your 225. And you can play around with these. You may want to actually put more of your efforts into lead gen and then focus maybe remarketing efforts on the sales. This is a little bit more advanced stuff in here, but I wanted to include it just in case you need to figure out what is the split essentially between this every day. And then you also may need to go ahead and multiply it out. Really all depends on what your sales target is, because obviously with 30 days in a month, we can't achieve 200 sales within that time period. We can't achieve one sale every single day in a monthly period to achieve 200 sales. We'd only achieve 30, 31, 29, 28, obviously depending on the month. So we'd actually have to multiply this out as well. But I'll leave that down to you because it really ultimately depends on your target goal. If this was, for example, 30, then yeah, this would work. We could literally just pretend this is the exact amount we need to spend every day based on our CPA target that we have in place. But that isn't the case for our hypothetical business X. Finally, just to wrap up the video here, I hope this has been helpful so far. I just wanted to really share a lot of this information because not many people talk about it on the internet, but this is really important for when planning your budgets and so forth. So our last hypothetical just here, so we've actually covered point 1 and point 3, but we've kind of skipped over point 2 for business X. So let's come back to that. So will we be profitable or will we lose money? Now, in most cases, if we're just realistic, let's bring these back down. Let's do a bit of more realistic, potentially, perspective here. Maybe these are 12. Maybe we have to spend a lot of money, etc. And this is a spend. We're going to go off this and say, okay, we actually need to spend $26,000. First thing you're going to want to do, especially if you're like business X where you are driving sales, is you should have your average order value. And specifically, we'll just look at gross profit here. We're not looking at net profit or revenue. We're just going to focus on gross profit for the time being. And let's just say for every average order value, the first time someone buys or just buys from, say, your e-commerce store, etc., let's just say it's $200. That's fantastic. We're in the profit because we're going to be generating 200 sales at $200 each, $40,000. Very simple math. 200 times $200, $40,000. Beautiful. This is a profitable campaign so far. You're going to make 1.5x ROAS. Keeping in mind this is gross profit. At the end of the day, it's not net profit. You may need to consider other pieces within this. It all depends on how you want to look at your business. You can obviously freely change these metrics as well. If you want to put in net profit or revenue and do further deeper calculations, you can do so. Again, the idea here was to have the most simplistic version just to get you off the ground up and running successfully. This may not be the case though. You may be, let's just say you're a digital product and you're selling for $97 or $95. You're actually going to be losing money in this case, right? Because you've had to spend $26,000, but your average order value is only $95 to get someone in the door, and therefore you've only generated $19,000, and therefore you've got a return on your ad spend of 0.7x. So for every dollar you spent, you've only gained 70 cents back, or pound you spent 70p, and so forth. Depends what currency you're in. Now, the big piece here that I want you to think about, because a lot of people don't think about it this way, is that when you are first advertising, especially if you are in the e-commerce realm or you're selling digital products and so forth, and you are looking at, making money off your ads, that's where your mind is going from a risk-averse perspective. You're trying to look at this ROAS and you want it to be 2x, 3x, 4x, all the way up, right? You may look at this and run a campaign and say, we're losing money. Let's turn this off. It's not working for us. Every dollar we're spending, we're actually not making money despite us still gaining brand awareness and generating actual customers. Your mind just might be in that area. Now, that's totally fine. That's very common to be in. But for most established business owners or marketers, the true growth that really comes from a business, or where we typically focus our efforts on, is the lifetime value. What is the lifetime value of an actual customer? And this is where you want your efforts to be, because the hardest part within marketing is obviously to get that first time sale, build up enough trust, disqualify any objections that come up, make sure there's enough comfort, etc., that you are obviously doing the right marketing in terms of the narrative, the messaging, the problem you are actually solving, and how you're addressing that through your marketing materials. That's the hardest part, just getting someone through the door. The true value comes from the lifetime profit when they repurchase from you, but when they become a loyal customer within your business. This is where this campaign is truly going to drive the momentum of growth within your business. So let's just say, someone comes in for $95, they buy one time, that's your average order value. But over time, you find that your customer typically actually spends like $350 with you. Well, if they spend $350 from you, you've obviously made the 95 here. We're just going to exclude this piece out of it. But over a lifetime, you're actually generating on average from this campaign $70,000, because those 200 customers that you generated, they're all going to generate you $350 each. Therefore, you're now actually in the profit when it comes to this. You're at a 2.6x ROAS. Now, keeping in mind, again, this is gross profit. There may be other overheads and so forth that come into mind. But I just wanted to call this out because it is highly important when it comes to planning your media campaigns and planning your budgets and looking at them in such a way that isn't very short-sighted, where you say, oh, we're losing money and, we need to cut off this campaign. Because actually, in the end, you've lost out on potentially doubling your essential initial investment. We're not spending any more money here. Of course, we could actually do marketing activities and spend money, such as having a loyalty or retention campaign that targets, previous customers and gets them into the funnel. But typically, those costs are going to be lower to begin with. Despite that, and so I don't keep rambling on that way, this is what you want to think about. You want to think about it in this sense. So with our hypothetical, we can tell Business X, well, we're going to need to spend roughly $26,000 every month based on our metrics that we have in place. We can see that right here. I would realistically round this up and say, to be comfortable, let's spend $30,000 a month if we're proposing this to a client, just to make sure we have a bit of wiggle room to ensure we reach this actual target. Better to underpromise and overdeliver, of course. One thing as well that we can then tell them is that the metrics we're in control of is our click-through rate, our conversion rates. Here on our lead and sales pages, we want to make sure we're in control of those. We can obviously set a cost per acquisition target and tell them here's what Meta recommends we need to spend to achieve one single cost per acquisition. Just to show you the math again, let's do this real quick. So it's 200. Let's just pretend we have 30 days within this month. We'll round this up to 7. We need 7 sales per day. Therefore, we would have to spend this times our 7. We would need to spend this amount of money every single day to achieve our 7 conversions based on Meta. But obviously, as you can see, this is much greater than our initial spend planned here. That's why I would rather go off this, because this is more based on actual metrics and conversions, rather than just a rough estimate of what Meta recommends in the beginning as your way of driving your results that you're looking for. I much prefer this approach rather than this approach. And one thing you can do, of course, is you can always come in here and change this to say, well, actually, this is what we need to do, and so forth. There you go. Now this is based off this budget, and maybe you do want to look at, well, how much do we need to spend every day? Again, if we're just doing a hypothetical, we have 30 days in market, we can divide these by 30 days. This is what you need to spend every single day on both of these campaigns to do it. And maybe you don't have a sales one. Maybe you actually have a traffic, and then you have a sales, and maybe this is remarketing, and you're specifically targeting people who've entered your funnel or have become a lead. Maybe put 40% of your budget there, and then 60% towards traffic to have a nice consistent flow of qualified leads coming in. So many different ways to work on this. Of course, if you need help, please do reach out. You can also visit aaronward.com. That's just my name.com. You'll also see there's a link up here. I do help business owners as well as entrepreneurs optimize their paid media advertising campaigns. However, if you do have any questions, please leave them down below. I will be more than happy to help. And yeah, go play around. Go have some fun with this budget calculator. I hope it serves you well within your business and sets you up for success, and also just opens up your eyes to the reality of how much it may actually truly cost for you to achieve your goal. And naturally, I should also wrap this up with, once you start running advertisements, once you start getting your toes in the market a little bit, update these with the actual metrics you are seeing, because that's going to give you a more accurate representation of what you need to spend to achieve your goal. That is something you should be doing anyway, where you're keeping track of everything. And just despite it saying you have to spend this to achieve your goal, start smaller. All right, work on just running a traffic campaign that is optimized towards landing page views. Don't worry about the big, hairy, scary objective of generating sales. Again, if we just quickly duplicate this sheet out, and let's just say we want to just do traffic, right? And let's just say every week we want to generate 1,000 people to our landing page, so 4,000, let's say, people a month, based on 4 weeks within roughly a month. Let's say our conversion rate is 100%, because all the traffic we drive is just 100%, right? We don't have to worry about this or this. This is just all going to get passed through. We're ultimately just driving 4,000 users to our page. Well, here we go. We can look at the metrics that we have in place. We'll still have to spend a little bit of money, but it's a lot less money, and these daily budgets almost become a lot less scary. Let's just say it's 100% for our traffic campaign. We're not doing anything here. There we go. We can spend 100% based on this daily budget here. We'll just divide it by the days in market. Typically, you actually want to divide by 30 by 0.4, because it's a bit more accurate in terms of how a lot of these platforms do it, because I'll show you 30.4 times 12 is almost 365 days a year. So it's rounded up. It's roughly what they use for when they're doing your daily budgets in platform. But yeah, that's another way you can look at this. Start with a less scary objective and then run a bit more of a smaller budget. But I'll be frank, long gone are the days where you can spend $5 on ads and get results. It is possible to do that. You can obviously start smaller, and you could say, let's just spend half of this. Let's go in 35 a day, and let's just see if we're hitting the metrics, right? You don't have to jump deep within the shark pool and start losing money. You can scale this up slowly, but again, this will at least tell you where you need to be in terms of spending. Again, any questions, head on over to aaronward.com, get in contact with me, or drop a comment below. I will be more than happy to help out. Otherwise, I hope this has been helpful, and I look forward to making some more videos to help you out in the future. If you have any videos you'd like to see, drop them down below as well. Otherwise, have a great day. I will speak to you soon.